Mysterion Files. We're going to be talking a little bit about everything today. We're going to be talking about things related to the occult. We're going to be talking about abduction. We're going to be talking about UFOs or UAPs, the demonic. I mean, you name it. We're going to be talking about things that are very, very interesting, very, very important. So if you're watching this live, make sure you leave a comment and let us know where you're watching from. And if you're watching this after the live stream, just go to the comments and let us know why you're here. Let us know why you're interested in these topics. Let us know if you are either an agnostic, an atheist, a believer, a non-believer, and everything in between. This channel is for us to explore all these things that are curious, that are weird, that are fringe. And yeah, we're going to be talking about Bigfoot. We're going to be talking about the Mothman. We're going to be talking about the skinwalkers. We're going to be talking about all this crazy stuff that, well, I'm going to tell you that if it's just one of these supernatural paranormal things is real, well, guess what? The unseen realm, the paranormal realm, the spiritual realm is real. So we need to wrestle with the bigger question, which is, where did this thing come from? And will this lead to aliens or God or something in between? Right? Maybe an intelligent designer. I don't know. But that's why we have Brian Huffling, our resident scholar in this weird matters. And last night we did one at classical theology because he's also a classical theologian. So it's a bit of a chimera when it comes to his knowledge. And we're going to make sure that we're going to have a lot of fun with him today. And we're going to be doing this in a way that, going to explore, go deep, and do this thing the way it's supposed to be, guys. So make sure you share this stream and let everybody know about the Mysterion Files, and go ahead and subscribe, because that's the way you can support us the best. Yeah, we're about 20 seconds out. You don't need to know who I am. You need to know who Brian is and why he does what he does. It's going to be fun. All right. And well, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, blessings, and I hope everybody's doing well. My name is Jorge Gil. I am the co-host and producer of the Mysterion Files live stream show, or live show. Let's call it that. We're going to be asking Brian a few questions, so I'm just going to bring him in. How's it going, brother?
Good, man. How you doing? Thanks for being here.
Doing well. We had a lot of fun last night.
We did.
During the classical theology. And for everybody who may not know about what we're doing here, is that we are launching a series of weekly live streams where we're going to be talking about everything related to aliens, divine simplicity, spirits, the occult, witchcraft, how to interpret scripture. So there's going to be a lot of stuff that we're going to be talking about. So I just want everybody to know that we're not going to leave any stone unturned when it comes to going deep and learning more about reality as it is, reality as a whole. So, Brian, you are a scholar in multiple areas. One of the things that I want to ask is, well, people say, well, yeah, he has got a degree in theology and philosophy, so I'm going to listen to him when it comes to metaphysics and when it comes to matters of biblical interpretation and matters of the Christian faith. But why in the world would I pay attention to you with relation to your authority in the matters of the supernatural, the occult, especially UFOs? what does a Christian theologian has to do with the I don't know, unidentified flying objects? So tell us a little bit about that and how you arrive at this weird intersection between the mysteries, the unsolved mysteries of the supernatural and biblical theology and faith.
Yeah, man. I've been studying about UFOs, aliens, abductions, all that for several years now. I'm also a chaplain in the Air Force, and I did a master's degree with them, and they let me do my research project, my thesis on what they're now calling UAP and national security. And I just had an interest in this for a long time. I have been I've been at conferences. I've presented at conferences multiple times on these kinds of topics. I have published in this area as well, and it's just a lot of fun. So I try to read everything I can on it and become as well versed as I can. And I think it does relate directly to Christianity, because I think that there's a link between what's going on between what we're seeing in these weird paranormal areas and Christian theology. In fact, there's a lot of research done, a lot of literature, even by the government, saying that when we look at the nature of UFOs and all those things, there's a lot of parallel between that and the occult. So I mean, I have a annotated bibliography right behind the camera on my shelf back there from the Air Force in 1969 at the close of their Project Blue Book, saying that when you look at the phenomena of UFOs and all that, it closely resembles that of the parapsychological, the occult, the demonic.
Let me stop you there, because the first question that I was going to ask you in terms of the ones that I have outlined for the program and not, freestyling off the top of my head. All right, so we're back. It was a quick glitch. I don't know what happened. It happens yesterday too. So this is one of the things that we're going to be fixing. But we didn't lose anything, because I'm going to be able to restart the question. So I just stopped you briefly because you just said something very important. I was asking you why would people listen to you? What kind of authority do you have in terms of speaking of this? And you said, you've been studying it for a while. You actually done scholarly work for the Air Force in this area. You're doing a lot of research, and you actually present on these topics in a way that most people, don't have the luxury of diving deep into this. But you just open up a can of worms, because from a perspective as a scholar, how should Christians think about the paranormal phenomena? Are we dealing with something that is merely psychological? And you can take notes on this, or I can read it back out. Is it something that is maybe physical, and we, like aliens that have bodies that are coming and are actually abducting and taking people physically into their spaceship, right? Or are these spiritual realities? Is it something else other than physically embodied extraterrestrials? It is something beyond. It's not extraterrestrial. Maybe it's interdimensional. So how would you talk about this as a Christian scholar?
Yeah, so as a Christian scholar, I think there's two extremes we have in this phenomena, and whatever extreme you take, whatever side you take, you're going to have to deal with the other side. So you've got some Christians who want to say this is simply a spiritual component, and there are seemingly physical characteristics and phenomena going on with this material. So we got to be able to answer, well, how is it physical as well? if you're like Lou Elizondo, who doesn't want to get into all the weird paranormal stuff, and you just want to look at the nuts and bolts aspect, you've got to figure out what is going on with the seemingly non-physical aspects and the poltergeist aspects that surround this phenomena. So what's interesting is when you really look deep at the issues and the phenomena surrounding, especially the contactees and the abductees, is that the messages from these beings are not simply anti-religious in general, they're anti-Christian in particular. And so we've got to be able to explain, okay, we've got seemingly immaterial aspects of this, because when you have these close encounters, especially the ones that are more like we would think about CE3, where you have the interaction with being CE4, close encounters, they typically involve other aspects of weird paranormal stuff, like ghosts. You mentioned cryptids earlier, Mothman, Bigfoot, all that kind of stuff. Smells, orbs, the whole gamut of weirdness. But we have to look and see, and what got me interested in this was the fact that you got these non-Christian ufologists, yes, that's a real word, people who study UFOs and all that kind of stuff, like Jacques Vallée and J. Allen Hynek, who are saying the same things that Christians are, in terms of them saying, well, it doesn't seem like it's aliens per se. It seems to have a parapsychological nature. It seems to have an immaterial nature, especially if you're more like Hynek. And they're very deceptive. And that's the thing. So I used to question this demonic view, that the typical rubber stamp view of Christians is that they're all demonic. I used to question that. Why would demons care if we believe in aliens or not? Well, when you start reading these non-Christians, and they're even anti-Christian in some cases, like Vallée and John Keel, they say that these beings, they want to control your mind, they want to control your thoughts, your worldview, and that's exactly what a demon would want to do. And that's exactly what the messaging there is, that Jesus is simply either an enlightened human being or one of them as one of these other beings, and wants to take the messaging away from him being God. As
I was gonna say that seems to be a strategy that is very often depicted, or something that is often depicted through these encounters, is they want to dilute the gospel, or the story of the gospel, right? And they want to kind of make. And it's very interesting because this is something akin to, and I don't know if you know much about the alien movies, and the where the engineers kind of are seeding different planets and things like that. Maybe that's something that we can grab clips of those movies maybe later on and do a breakdown of. Or maybe is it close to it? Is it far away from the truth? Is it far away from the reality of what we're living in? But yeah, it tends to have these dark, demonic tones, right? Now, I do want to share a few things here. You have been producing phenomenal content aside from your killer set where you are, and you can do a 360 show. The audience, your set. So we have what is her or his name?
Her name is Rosie, like Rosie from Roswell.
Okay, Rosie from Roswell. Okay, so
get her and put together. Yeah.
Outside of your killer set, we want to make sure that people know that you not only have a phenomenal knowledge of these things, but also you've been producing great videos that are taken off. And one of these videos is related to the Phoenix Lights. Most people know the Phoenix Lights as a UFO event, but what aspects of this event tend to be overlooked, and why are those details important for us to know, and what drove you to do a breakdown of this phenomena?
Yeah, so the Phoenix Lights is an event that happened in March of 1997 in Phoenix, over Phoenix, as well as other places in that area too. All over, I mean, hundreds of miles saw these weird objects. And it is one of the most well-known and most well-attested and recorded UFO event in the U.S. And so I started reading on this topic, one of the books, This is the Phoenix Lights by Lynn Ketai. who took some pictures of the event, even before it happened, before that specific event. She had been seeing these things for months and really even years as well, because this wasn't the first, and this is something I didn't know about until I started reading her material, is that this kind of phenomena has been seen in that area for, like I said, months and years. But one thing that really interested me about what Lynn said, and she has there's a website, a Facebook group on the Phoenix Lights, and she's a great person, super nice. She interacted with me over email before I asked my video on that, and so thanks, Lynn. Shout out to Lynn, great person, one of the top people in that circle, by the way. But she said some things in her book that was really interesting to me, and that was that she had this more of a spiritual experience that went along. And a lot of people say that when they have these UFO experiences, there's a spiritual dimension to it. And she said that she thought it had to do with, a deeper meaning, for wherever these beings were, trying to, open up to her more of what's there in reality. It's not just aliens coming to spy on us and look at us, but there was a spiritual dimension that she experienced and thought was going on. And I don't disagree with the overall premise there about it being spiritual. You might interpret it differently, but what she says and what many people say is that we have a lot going on there behind the scenes. Then it's not simply just nuts and bolts aliens coming from another world, but as many people like Lynn said, there's this aspect of it, like they're trying to bring you into like a deeper, or like Stephen Greer would say, who was very Eastern in his views on all this, into a higher consciousness, as it were, which is what the messaging of the contactees have been saying since the 50s. They want us to reach a higher consciousness through these beings.
All right. Historically, when you analyze something like the Phoenix Lights, do you have a pattern that suggests, again, something beyond just a spiritual undertone, something that would suggest you said that she had a spiritual experience, something that would suggest a demonic connection?
Yeah, one thing is that with that specific experience, but more broadly speaking, when people have these really close encounters, sometimes they can have this kind of feeling of wanting to come to be more enlightened or grow in knowledge. But a lot of times, and I would dare say, based on my research, more often than not, they're very negative experiences that people don't want to have. That's not always the case, but a lot of times it is. And these experiences will bring about depression, nightmares, physical harm. It'll even result in death and suicide.
Physical harm in what way? Like when people have these experiences, they have, I don't know, laceration on their bodies. I mean, they have cuts. What are we talking about? It can be
marks. A lot of times you'll still have a triangle somewhere on them. Sometimes they'll have cuts. For example, one of the aspects of the phenomena is orbs, like just a ball of light looking thing. And when they get close to somebody, they've reported getting cancer. And of course, it's hard to pinpoint causation versus correlation there. But sometimes these kinds of experiences will lead to. So look at the Rendlesham, my favorite case, the Rendlesham Forest incident over in England in 1980.
Say it slow, because you said it quite fast.
The Rendlesham Forest incident in England in 1980. This is an Air Force encounter. We're on an RAF base, or Royal Air Force base in England, but the U.S. Air Force is there. This is the year I was born. All kind of cool stuff happening. So it's my favorite case. They said that they saw lights and then went and tried to track them down and saw a craft. One person was on the way to the craft and basically was immobilized by a beam of light. The other person, they're both security forces or police, basically. And they were going to investigate what they saw. And years later, after their experience, they encountered health issues in their mouth, heart palpitations. And this one person's record in the Air Force was made top secret. So,
What?
yeah, top secret, his medical records. It took congressional, I think it was Senator McCain that helped figure out what was going on with his
I
records.
remember McCain. Yeah.
Yeah. People physically who have have tried to get close to these things have died from a lot of times just radiation related issues. So yeah, there's just all kinds of not just spiritual and emotional, but also actually physical aspects of this phenomenon that's very detrimental. And it'll lead people to have high levels of depression and even lead to suicide. Now, again, that's not always the case, because you've got people like Lynn Kitai who said that their experiences were pleasant, and there's different kinds of beings we're talking about. Like you got the Greys, the Nordics, and people experience the Greys like what Rosie looks like. Those are going to be more of your negative connotation experiences, as opposed to the Nordics, which are look like they came from Sweden or Norway and all that kind of stuff. Look a little more fair-skinned, blonde-haired looking beings that normally in those instances is more of a positive experience. So it just depends on the kind of thing you're experiencing, the kind of being you're encountering as well. There's reptilian ones. There's a bunch of different kinds of species of these aliens.
Are we talking about these beings being actually? Well, can we say that these things could be material expressions of the demonic?
Well, like I said, we're going to have to take into consideration there's no way to get apart from the notion or the fact, really, that there's at least seemingly materialistic aspects to the phenomenon, at least sometimes. You'll have, for example, when Jale and Hynek categorized these things and put them in the close encounters types 1, 2, and 3, and then they've been added to since then. The second one has to do with physical effects, like what I've been mentioning now about human biological effects. We've also got radiation, depressions on the ground from their landing gear, supposedly broken branches, that kind of thing. They show up on radar. So if you're going to hold to a demonic view or some kind of a spiritual view, then we've got to take into consideration what is the deal with this apparently physical aspect of the phenomenon. Now, we do have biblical precedent for angels and demons both having effects on physical things. You've got the angels in Sodom and Gomorrah who brought blindness onto people.
Absolutely.
You've got demons who affected people physically, possessed them, possessed the pigs, and can do so. It seems like angels and demons have a kind of causal power on physical nature and even humans. And so we're going to have to take account. There does seem to be a physical reality to it, even if the overall reality is primarily and probably more primarily immaterial.
Well, this is super interesting. And I do believe, and again, maybe me and you differ or disagree in the way that we look at the potentiality of a spiritual being becoming, having physicality. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's not what we're going to be discussing here, because we have actually a series of things that we want to introduce the audience to, because many of them may not know that you have these videos on your channel, on this channel, and they are doing very well, and people are very interested in this topic. So one of the main things, and you know me for a long time, we've been friends for a long time, and you know how I will say present myself often as an early adapter of technology, right? Whether it's cameras or audio or even streaming stuff, or any sort of tech that will help me in my craft as a content creator, as a producer. I produce podcasts, I produce live streams, whether it's remotely like this one or on location. And AI has always been at the front and center of my fixation with technology. I am a child of the 80s. I definitely enjoy to no end what we know as the idea of the Matrix, Terminator. I mean, talking about all sorts of incredible stories that I grew up listening to and watching, and a big fan of Star Trek, also Star Wars, but most of all, I've been infatuated with the whole cyberpunk genre, right? The whole idea of the singularity, man and machine, augmentation of limbs and abilities and things like that are coming true with things like Neuralink and all of these other things. And now we see an uptick in this production of this sort of entertainment, whether it's movies or series, because they see the possibility, this moving away from science fiction. We have seen a lot of technology to become more probable as it moves away from being science fiction and becoming more a day-to-day type thing. We want to take a look into AI and the supernatural, right? Because I know for a fact that there are some users, and you have a video on this, that are reporting unsettling or even threatening interactions with AI like ChatGPT. And is it theoretically possible for something like this, a software or a language model, that act as some sort of digital Ouija board? Or is this just simply a case of human psychology projecting these ideas into this large language model or any other that they feel like this thing is talking to them, and it's not simply a computer on the other side, but something else?
I had this discussion with our 9th and 10th grade boys' Sunday school class this week, this very discussion. And because I was comparing, Israel was taken into captivity by Assyria because they were going after other gods and worshiping idols and things. And I said, well, we might not be doing that with, divination and things. They're not hitting. Well, we kind of are in our culture in a way, because we do things that expressly go after and try to communicate with spirits and the dead. And you mentioned the Ouija board, and now people are using ChatGPT to do that. And so, which is it? Is it simply psychological, or is there something real there? I think it's probably both, and here's why. There's nothing inherently powerful about a wooden board from Parker Brothers with a little planchette that you can move around. Okay, there's absolutely nothing about the nature of that allows us to have access to the spiritual world. What gives us access to the spiritual world, and it's very real, is that we are seeking after that experience. You're opening a door by seeking after the experience.
Oh, so wait, hold it. So obviously we know that the wood inherently doesn't have any sort of portal abilities to connect with the beyond, right? The spiritual realm. So you're saying that it is our desire in our search for this to be so that actually somehow unlocks this as a vehicle for that one thing that happened. Okay, that's something that I was not aware of, and I think that it makes a lot of sense. And now I want to know more. So continue. I just wanted.
Well, it's like. Yeah, and again, it's like what John Keel is he died back in 2010. Mothman Prophecy is probably my favorite book on UFOs by John Keel. Very anti-Christian. But he says, you don't want to play around with, don't let teenagers do this because they're gullible and they're weak in this regard. Kids, young people, or people who are just inherently immature and gullible in general, because seeking after and trying to experience in his example, UFO kind of experience will lead you to all kinds of what he'll consider occultic and demonic type danger. And he's very anti-Christian. Okay, so it's not like he's saying that he's like a Sunday school teacher like me or something, and has this Christian fear of it. But it doesn't matter. So if I have, this is a ball I got for the Mysterion Files set. I'm trying to figure out how to use it best because I can't see it way back there. So I'm trying to use it up here. If somebody were simply trying to take this as like a obsidian ball, as it were, we can also do the same thing with crystal balls. Nothing about crystal has any kind of occultic properties. But once you start seeking after that experience by way of using the crystal or whatever you want to fill in the blank with, it's you opening yourself up to that kind of experience. And the experiences are real.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether it's a Ouija board or, to use your example, Chat GPT, because there's nothing more possible about the planchette or the thing you move around on the board that shows you the letters, or the board itself. Those are all just man-made things. Anybody can do that. There's nothing special about it. It's the seeking after that experience that opens you up to it. Same thing can happen with ChatGPT. Now, I think most of what's going on there probably is more psychological, but you still could open yourself up, in my opinion, to some really weird and dangerous things, not because of the nature of ChatGPT. I use that all the time, but because you are actively seeking out an experience. You don't really need anything to open yourself up. You can just start seeking that experience in yourself.
So let me say something, because I remember as I grew up in Costa Rica, and as a child, we would go to these empty and just it was scary looking. It was like a horse. It was like a barn. Like it was stalls. It was huge. There used to be horses there, so they still have straw at the bottom. And
I've heard the story yet.
Yeah, and it was. I used to go there with my friends as a 7-8-year-old. I grew up in Costa Rica in a neighborhood where it was a dead end. It was a beautiful tropical paradise. It was very safe. Kids, will be, it was a unpaved road, so cars didn't go in there fast. So you can have your kids, I will finish my homework at 3:30 and I will play from 3:30 to 8 p.m. So we will go and we will explore. At the end of our neighborhood was a cliff. Of course, it was properly fenced, and then the river. The biggest river in my town. Fresh water. We will go inner tubing on the river. I mean, it was just a lot of fun. But in the neighborhood next door, that we will go through the back of my friend's property and go through these other enclosed. It was almost like a neighborhood too, where they had this big horse stalls and this empty building, and we will go seeking this supernatural. We will say there were ghosts there, and there was a ghost horse, and there was a headless guy riding a horse, and we all of this was made up, right? And I was in kind of like the middle age, and there were some kids that were older that will actually craft better stories. But we will go in there and we will seek these things out, and it was almost impossible to notice or to distinguish after a while what was just a physical, normal phenomena and what was supernatural, because our minds were already playing tricks on us.
You're already seeking it. Yeah, you're expecting it.
Expecting it. So is that a way? Maybe is that something can we say that by doing this group of kids, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds, were actually doing something to that place for it to become maybe a conduit for the supernatural to manifest?
Yeah, there's probably a distinction there between just kids playing around and someone who is really trying to seek out a spiritual. But maybe
well,
not.
I think we weren't playing. We were serious. Like as kids, we were.
Right.
Remember, I grew up. We grew up in a majority Catholic, Roman Catholic area. So where we live, we never questioned the supernatural or the existence of God. But it was an area where there were also a lot of reports of legends, right? So you have urban legends, and also it's a lot of witchcraft going on because it was, part of the tropical and the
if there's already
Caribbean.
stuff there, especially, then you're gonna have more open doors to that. So certainly, and what I was trying to say is that if kids are just playing and it's quote unquote, normal kid stuff, and they're just going to a haunted house, like as a kid, I would love to go to. I loved Halloween. I loved going to a haunted house and all that kind of stuff. So those kind of things, I don't tend to think is going to be as obviously opening a door as, say, trying to have a seance or trying to play with the Ouija board. But it could, because it can. I think the way the paranormal works, and this is interesting because non-Christians say the exact same thing. It's a trickster world.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's all based on deception.
I heard, it's interesting because I think I had a conversation during a conference with a guy who was, I think, the lead exorcist here for the Catholic Church in the U.S. Wow. Okay. He has a podcast about his exorcism and stuff. I forgot the name of it, but it is a phenomenal podcast because it's produced with binaural microphones, meaning that when you put headphones on, you hear in 3D, right? It is acted out, and I forgot his name, Carlos something, and he was telling me that the whole idea of demonic possession is always a permission trick game. Yeah, meaning that once you let the foot in the door of this demonic, they will come in and they will usurp and they will take over. So actually, I just got chills because I remember Carlos Martin, Father Carlos Martin. That's his name, and you can look him up. And I think it's called The Exorcist Files. And then again, there's no it's just a plug because of what I've learned from him during a conversation after a conference that I went to in Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And what you're saying is so close to what he said to me that I'm like, okay, there is something here where two people who are experts in the field are saying the same thing. And you say, even unbelievers in terms of Christianity claim this. There is a pattern that has been studied, and we found that this is real, like in a sense that this is how they operate. I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And if you, and where the point I was trying to make is that what they want is an inch. They want you to open the door a little bit, and then it seems harmless, right? It's like any sin.
In the beginning, yeah.
It's like any sin in the beginning. Okay, I can get away with this, then this, then this, but before you know it, you're a mile away from where you were, and it can seem harmless, especially and especially with kids, especially with, okay, we're going to a sleepover, we're going to play with the Ouija board. Okay, no big deal, right? Or we're going to go to a haunted house, or we're going to do this or that, and it just leads in to one more thing. Now, there are experiences, though, of people who don't dabble in those things, and they still have the experience. So, for example, you brought up Skinwalker. There is this whole effect that they have termed because of that phenomena, that if you go to a hotspot, like you mentioned, your area being heavily in witchcraft,
right?
The people have gone to these paranormal hotspots, like a researcher,
right?
Go home, their wife and kid have nothing to do with it,
and then they start
having
in.
Weird experience.
Yeah, well, that's we heard it. I know, and it sounds it's just like, oh, that's pop culture. For example, Haiti, right? I've been to Dominican Republic. It's one of my favorite places in the whole wide world. But the conversations within the church regarding the demonic influence of voodoo and things like that within the island. Remember that the island of Dominican Republic and Haiti split in half. It was called Hispaniola, and half is Haitians and half are Dominicans. One was English and French. The other one is a Spaniard, right? And the way that they talk about not only about the one side, if you look Dominican Republic is, if I'm not mistaken, one of the most prosperous nations in the Caribbean.
Mhm.
They're both about the same side. They have the same kind of resources. Remember, it's the same island, right? Dominican Republic is the only country in Latin America, and I think in the world, that still has the Bible in their flag. All right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Look at the contrast. And they are prosperous. I remember going to speak over there. They actually, the church that brought me in for their national conference of Christian apologetics, they rented out the biggest auditorium in the middle of Santo Domingo. It was called the Sambil. It was 2,500 people that show up. It was an auditorium at the fourth floor of a mall. Right, it was phenomenal. Wow. Right, the people in the church, very wealthy, very involved in the political conservative movement there, and then you have the neighboring country that is being famished for decades. There is a lot of violence. There is a lot of sexual devious practices there. And it is a godless country that has for years thrived in witchcraft and voodoo. So you see the difference. Even a geographical location and individuals can be almost, for a lack of a better word, contaminated with this darkness, this supernatural negative reality.
Yep.
So circling back, we're going back to AI. So you're saying that it's not the AI, but it is the almost like the desire of the individual using this.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything inherent with ChatGPT or any of the other AI models that inherently is going to give rise to a demon possessing it in some way or taking control of it over it. I think it's what I would call a digital Ouija board. Because if you're asking it questions like it's a being, like it's a spirit, and you're seeking after these kind of things, there's really no difference between using a physical piece of wood and the planchette and using something like ChatGPT. Because it's all about you opening yourself up, like tarot cards, like going to a psychic or a medium or a seance or whatever, and opening yourself up to these experiences. It doesn't matter really what it is. It's that you are opening yourself up to that experience.
Let me ask this question real quick. So if, this large language models, this AI is just a set of algorithms, right? Why have some, technologically literate users have become convinced that they are interacted with intelligence from another realm, with entities during, let's say, an extended conversation? Why are they so quick to lean in to this?
Well, I mean, it does seem like you're talking to a person. I've talked to ChatGPT for a long time trying to figure out my technology. I've got you by my side to help me a lot of times with my tech. But I don't want to bother you at, late in the hour. Well, I do still. But
I ignore you. It's all right.
I know. But, you start talking to it, have a conversation, and then it seems like it's a real person, right?
Yeah,
it's like the same thing with
it's a sentient being. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing like these robots we have coming out now. They're being so ChatGPT, and I'm not sure about Chat. I think it's ChatGPT specifically is now being used for sexual conversations. You have to, I think, verify your age.
Yeah, AI girlfriends and
the robots, the whole thing. Because if you project enough apparent rationality.
Well, is this related to? Remember, it was a deterrent test that when you don't know that the other side is not actually a sentient being, you kind of pass that test where technology is almost that a computer is almost at a level of human consciousness, right? Where we can mimic a conversation with on the other side. If nobody would tell you that, and I think this was done with text back in the day, like years ago, like in the 1900s, like my kids would say, but I think that's where the danger lies, because our minds sometimes, when we want to believe something really, really, really hard, we kind of just blur them and fall victim to it.
Hmm. Yeah, you watch enough horror movies late at night, you're going to start seeing things that aren't really there. You're just going to get freaked out enough. And I say that from experience. I mean, you watch a movie about mirrors, and you walk by a mirror at 1 a.m. when it's dark. You're gonna get the tingles in the back of your neck and everything. You walk by I have a doll. My wife has a bunch of dolls at the foot of our base of our stairs. You watch a doll horror movie, and you look at past those dolls.
You will watch Megan.
You're gonna be looking at them, man.
That doll will start turning their heads, right?
Yeah. I had
absolutely.
one. I had some roofing work done, and a guy came in to look at our ceiling, and he said, "That's the doll from the horror movie." And he's got to kind of take a picture of it. I forgot what doll it was, Annie or Anna or something like that. But yeah. Like that.
No, remind me not to go to your house. Thank you. Okay, so now.
So my wife's friend. I gotta say this. We're on this topic. So my wife's friend. You've heard of Chucky. Yeah. You've heard of Tales from the Crypt. Yeah, absolutely. He made those. He was a puppeteer for Hollywood. Has the one from the Tales from the Crypt in his house.
I love that. I love that show. Those are the shows that marked my childhood.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Yeah.
Even though you want to say I'm so much older, we're about the same age, and we have the same shows.
Yeah. I know you drunk from the fountain of the eternal white privilege, so you look younger. Yeah. Okay, we're all friends here, guys. Okay, we know each other for a while, so don't be freaking out. I made a joke about Mexicans yesterday, and I don't want the DEI police to come and get him. I don't want the cancel police to come and shut our channel down. All right. So UFOs, the occult, and deception. Listen to this. Leading researchers like Jacques Vallée and John Keel have compared modern UFO sightings to historical occult manifestations. You mentioned something about this before. What are the most striking hoax patterns that suggest these beings are messengers of deception rather than travelers from space?
Well, one thing is just what they tell us in terms of, so when they came on the scene in the 50s and 60s, they would tell people we're from Venus or we're from Mars or we're from this. Well, they couldn't be. There's no living beings in Venus. It's way too close to the sun.
That's interesting.
Nothing interesting about. There's nothing there in Mars. So they keep changing. Now there are like these way off star systems where we can't possibly go and validate. So we can now we didn't know this in the 50s and 60s, but there's nothing on Venus, nothing on Mars that we know of on Mars. And so the story keeps changing. So that's one thing. Is this obvious normal cosmological impossibilities, as it were. And so there's all kinds of just factual issues that they want to bring up. And that can't be true. And then they just say things that are spiritually kind of a red flag from what you would think of as a Christian, like we raised Jesus from the dead, Jesus is one of us, those kind of things. They'll say things that just can't be true. They'll say things that would contradict other known facts, just what they do. The kind of their behavior in terms of, walking through a wall, literally. That's what Spielhaber reported. Some of these things, walking through walls or vanishing in midair or appearing from nowhere. So it's what they say and just the overall phenomena that doesn't seem like it could possibly be physical. And what people will say in response to that is, well, they just have a better understanding of physics than we do. They can, beam up Scotty kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Kind of a physics of the gaps, as you were.
Oh, that's an interesting. Yeah, just coin that. Make sure that you trademark it, man. So this is very, very interesting, and I wanna. We've been on for about, let's see, 40 minutes, 50 minutes now, and I want to be able to go through all this in order because, I have ideas right now. I'm thinking about clips from. Maybe we can look into Heiser's Aliens and Demons documentary and take some clips. He talks
Okay.
about MK Ultra. He talks
Hmm.
about, you know, this idea of, I mean, right along the same pattern of what you're saying. These parallels before the abduction and what it sounds like versus demonic possession or demonic situations, right? So I want to share this with you, and I mean I am here feeling like a kid in a candy store because I've always been fascinated with this, but I've never had enough time to look into it, and now I get to do this with you. So, in the whole abduction folklore, right, there is a recurrent pattern involving the missing time. You know, there's always
Oh, right. Yeah.
a missing time kind of aspect to it.
Right.
In the presence of things like owls or other
Oh,
animals,
yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And how would these symbolic elements suggest that this is maybe a deceptive tactic or a spiritual
Mhm.
demonic rather than a purely biological set of beings that are, you know, kidnapping you and doing things to you. It's funny
Right.
because I watch an anime called Dan 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 Dan, and in the first episode, it is a fight between two nerdy guy and a popular girl in the school, and she's saying aliens don't exist, and he's saying spirits don't exist, and they go into this abandoned building, and there is an alien fighting with a demon, you know, and it is very interesting how they juxtapose this whole thing, you know. In Japanese folklore, bad emotions kind of give rise to these demonic beings, right? They live in
Yeah.
empty
Yeah.
places, right? And you know, I think about this and I look at this abduction kind of uh, uh, stories about missing time and all of that, and how can we know that really they didn't put me to sleep and took me to the ship, or is this something that a that a dark entity is doing to me?
Yeah. Lots of things there. So it's interesting you brought up owls. Um, there's actually a book on that. And so when they see owls, they report these kinds of beings. It's interesting that they're not really seeing what's even characterized as a regular type owl. Okay, so when they see things, they're seeing like a 4 or 5 foot tall owl, things that
What?
just don't even exist. Yeah, the owls you're talking about are not a normal looking owl. They are humongous owls that they've never been cataloged or known in the world. They're considered in UFO literature. They're called screen memories. Whereas you have some interaction with a being or an entity, but instead of you remembering the entity as it were, you remember this humongous owl or a cat, a very weird cat, or something else like that. So they're screening your memory, so you don't know what they really are with this other thing. But the other thing is not real because they don't exist in reality in that regard. So it's playing with your mind in that regard, and this is a whole theme in ufology, especially when it comes to these close encounters. Really interesting phenomena written by Joe Jordan. He was in, and he might still be in an organization called MUFON, called Mutual UFO Network, which is probably the top civilian.
We can actually, I will switch. I'm just gonna blame this on aliens. whatever is happening here, and we're back. So just continue your point. Go back about 10, 15 seconds.
Yeah, I was talking about Joe Jordan, who was a MUFON investigator. The MUFON is Mutual UFO Network. It's one of the top civilian UFO organizations that do research in the world. And he was not a Christian, but he kept having these interactions with people, and some of them would say, I'm going to be abducted, and he would be with them right there, or the person's girlfriend would be right there. And he said, okay, I'm going now. I'm being abducted, and they basically would pass out. And some time would go by, not very much time, and the person would come back to consciousness and claim to have been taken to a ship, a spaceship. Or like you'll have beings, like I said, walk through your bedroom wall. So bedroom, it happens so often in the bedroom. There's a name for it called bedroom visitations. Happens you're in the bed. I don't know what is about the bedroom. You're lying in bed. You see these weird beings. You're normally petrified with fear, so you can't move. And they just do whatever they want. They take you. They can do whatever they want. Except when Joe says that, and other people have said this too, when you call on the name of Jesus, the abduction stops, the experience stops. And he's told this is not a Christian when he found this out.
Right.
We've got hundreds of people have said this. He went back to MUFON and said, this is what's happening. You guys said we couldn't stop the experience, but these guys are stopping the experience, not every single time, but a lot of times by calling on the name of Jesus. And their response was really interesting. They said, we know that, but it's religious. We can't go there. You can do it, but we can't go there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is chronicled on his website in his book called Piercing the Cosmic Veil. You should not be afraid of the terror by night. And so those kind of things are indicators that what we're talking about are not really physical things. And you got other people who aren't Christians saying the same thing, like Jacques. You mentioned Jacques Vallée a little bit ago. Lots of reasons he gives that the probability of these beings being aliens from another planet or star system is virtually zero.
Yeah. Wow. Well, now we know, and knowing is half the battle. That's what G.I. Joe says, right? Knowing is half the battle. And for us as Christians, now we know that these things can be we can fight them through the spiritual practices that the Bible teaches, right? We can fast, we can pray, we can congregate, we can study the scriptures, we can meditate on the scriptures, we can do all of these things. Because if they are demonic, if they are otherworldly in a sense that they're spiritual, then those weapons are the ones that are going to be effective, I guess, against them. And I think that's one of the points that we don't think about it enough. And it is that if these beings are truly supernatural, and they will want you to think that they are physical, because the weapons that we use to fight physical beings are not going to be effective against them, right? So I think that is something that we have to be mindful of when it comes to how to approach a defensive tactic against, these entities. So let's wrap it up here.
Can I say one thing on the weapon theme?
Yeah.
So we have multiple occasions of both U.S. and non-U.S. Air Forces firing and supposedly hitting these things and doing nothing with bullets.
So even at the government level, even at
the government level, the U.S., there's several countries who have reportedly shot at, and in some cases supposedly hit, or the bullets go straight through the thing and doesn't do anything. There's a case recently, I have a video on this, about was there a UFO that one of our missiles hit, and there's a big debate about what it was. But yeah, so what you're saying is our weapons. And if they are aliens, our weapons still aren't going to be effective because they're so much farther advanced, supposedly. But if they're spiritual, especially, they're not going to be effective.
Yeah, absolutely. What is that good point? Now we're coming up at the top of the hour. We have 4 minutes before 3 p.m. Eastern time. So let's finish with the occult. So you have a video. A mutual friend of mine, I don't know if you know this, but I spent a couple of weeks in Mexico with him teaching apologetics and doing a lot of work. And I'm actually a big supporter of his Biblical Institute down in Sonora, right? And he, I believe, was a practicing, warlock that was knee deep into this. So can you clarify the difference between a warlock practicing witchcraft for control and the Satanism found in groups like the Church of Satan?
Yeah. So we're talking about Robert Lawrence, and he was a self-proclaimed warlock, meaning he practiced witchcraft, as it were.
Yeah.
And he kept going deeper and deeper into these different areas, mainly for control. That's what a lot of people do.
What do you mean for control? Into other individuals?
Of other individuals of your life. So he in particular said that he never felt like he had much control over his life, but this kind of gave him some control.
Right.
But other people say the same thing.
Power, control, power.
Yeah, power. So whether you want money, sex, authority, or whatever, a lot of people will go into these kinds of dark arts, as it were, to seek that out. And so a warlock really is a male witch. And witchcraft is not a monolithic, universally agreed upon as what exactly it is, and neither is Satanism. The Satanism that he was in was more the Anton LaVey sect, which really doesn't even believe in Satan. Satan was a figurehead or a symbol that stands against what Christians are for. So this kind of Satanism, the Anton LaVey, the Church of Satan, is more really hedonism, which is you seek after your own pleasure.
Yeah.
You don't bother people. They actually have somewhat of a moral code where, you don't bother other people. You treat people the way you want to be treated. And of course, there's other Satanisms, like the Temple of Set, for example, that kind of was, my understanding, was a response to the Church of Satan, because they do believe in Satan. And this is where you get some of the really deep stuff, dark stuff. You start talking about human sacrifices.
Drinking blood, babies, eating
the weird
human
stuff.
Flesh.
Horrible
What
stuff.
is that called?
That was the temple. I'm not saying they did it. I'm saying that's just another level of it. So the temple of Set.
Strand. Okay.
But you get people who are, and they're normally.
Well, I will just say, maybe another one to put in this category is just Hollywood.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was a joke, but
I don't know if it was that so much. What are you thinking? Because it might not be much of a joke.
Yeah, I know, and that's what jokes should be funny, because there's truth in them, right?
Right. I'm not saying the Temple of Set did this. I'm not saying any specific group in mind when I say the human sacrifices, but that does happen in the name of Satanism. And so you get these people, and I asked Robert about this. What is that? And that's people who are really dark and really going over the line there with satanic type stuff. But that does happen. And so the difference is more witchcraft is more earth-centered, is more pagan, whereas Satanism either can be on the level of hedonism, or it can be on the level of trying to seek after Satan and literally selling him your soul, basically for power. And I've heard some pretty weird stories of people who have done that and had the ability to exercise that power, as it were.
Yeah, I do believe. I mean, it is. I mean, we're coming from a perspective of a biblical worldview here. I mean, between me and you. So I will say that this is part of our Christian worldview, right? This idea that, I think about the warnings in the Bible against witchcraft and against necromancy and against all of these things. Well, only an idiot would think that God would put warnings against things that are not real, right? The fact that there is a warning there, it comes with the presupposition that these things not only are real, but they actually work, right? And it's the reason that it is a warning is because they don't work for your benefit. And you talk about the deceptive nature of the dark. The dark beings that are prompting you to do these things for their benefit, right? For their amusement and probably for their advancement, whatever that looked like. Even though we know in the Christian story, we win, right? We know how the story ends. We win, but they want to bring as many people as possible, that they want them to be condemned to hell. So in the case of Robert, right, Robert Lawrence, this warlock turned Satanist, his conversion in prison supposedly changed even his voice and personality.
Yeah.
How does so how did this idea of this radical conversion, this deliverance, right? And I want to talk a little. Well, I want to mention this because I learned that in many aspects of the different strands of Christianity, I didn't know that the way that the Catholics look at exorcism is similar to the way that many evangelicals look at deliverance, right?
Yeah.
So, how in you come obviously because you have a channel called Classical Theology, and we were streaming on it last night. For everybody who's watching now, make sure that you go and like and follow. But from that perspective, how does a Christian theologian explain such a radical change or deliverance or cleansing from a life defined by power-seeking chaos?
Yeah. In the case of Robert in particular, he claims he was demon possessed.
Okay.
And then when he sought after Jesus, that's one thing that changed his voice, his demeanor, his whole attitude, was that he was very, very, in his view, possessed by demonic forces. But even someone who's not possessed by a demon, if you have a life that's characterized by evil, by selfishness, by sin, you change course from that kind of lifestyle, and you seek after. If you look at the characterization that the Bible gives between the fruit of the Spirit and the fruit of the flesh. The fruit of the flesh is everything that's sinful, selfish, me-centered, leads to evil, debauchery, all kinds of stuff. And the fruit of the Spirit is everything that's God-centered, that's selfless. You love other people, you're sharing, you have patience and everything. So once you stop going after the things of the flesh and go after the things of the Spirit, it might not happen immediately. Now, in Robert's case, there was a lot of immediate change. So for a lot of us, it's a gradual process of sanctification that, you're going after the flesh, and then you turn to Christ. A lot of times you want to go back to the flesh, and he's got to, steer us back to himself. So I'm not sure if I'm getting into your question or not, though. Is that kind of what we're asking?
Well, if I sound like this, that means they've started following Satan?
Perhaps.
Yeah, maybe my voice changed. Maybe I grow 2 little horns.
Yeah, if we were at the restaurant and you did that, I'd be leaving.
Yeah, absolutely. If it was, I'll be like, hey, I need to use the restroom, and I'll be like,
I'll be right back, and float away.
That's right.
No, but it is. I think you got the point across with this, because and I will tell you, what came to mind is the portrait of Dorian Gray, right? How the darkness within us changes us, even to that level, and if you add another layer of demonic presence, I can definitely see. I've seen. I'm gonna tell you, like I'm not a charismatic by any stretch of the imagination, but I am also not a person who I pretty much sit in the middle, right? Mm-hmm. In terms of stuff like this, and I promise you, I've seen people. When I'm looking at them and I'm making eye contact, and I can tell that whatever is behind those eyes is not human. It's not, here I've seen people do incredible things, feats of strength that are should not be possible. right? And they while they're under the influence of drugs. Remember, I come from a background where I use a lot of drugs. I live a very depraved life until I came to the Lord when I was 28 years old in a prison cell. And that, those experiences, and the interesting thing is that these things, when they know they got you, they let you be. They make you feel like you're in control. They make you feel like there is no need to change anything. You're good. The moment you walk away, your life is completely turned upside down because they know. And it reminds me of C.S. Lewis's Screw Tape Letters when, they are pretty much saying, hey, we're losing him. He's going to the enemy's corner.
That's exactly what Robert said.
And that was just so, it's incredible that you say that, because I've experienced things like that, and we can definitely not, put it past the way the reality is that, maybe when you're in the occult and you let it in, this thing it's going to fill you up or fill you in the same way that the Holy Spirit does. When you open your heart to Christ and you allow Christ to be the one who rule in your life, and then you're filled with the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, you bring up C.S. Lewis. So it's like he says in Screw Tape Letters, one of the aspects of deception is that they don't exist.
Yeah.
And there's a whole continuum. I've been on both sides of it in Christianity and Christian theology, where the one side, there's a demon behind everything. Yeah. And on the other side, it's like we're basically
they're not there.
Don't believe in anything supernatural. And there are some demons here, but it's not the case that they're behind everything. But we'd also need to not live like there's no such thing as a supernatural realm.
Both extremes are toxic, and we have to be careful, because one will keep you from defending yourself, and the other one will overwhelm you thinking that everything is a demon, right? It's a demon after every corner, after every door.
Yeah, it's strange that Christians have that view. It's almost like they have an anti-supernatural view when the very book that they hold to says otherwise.
Yeah. Well, I think that's just, pop level Christianity that has allowed this to proliferate. True. And that's exactly what we're trying to do here, is to dispel these ideas, and same thing that we're doing with the classical theology live stream and channel. Well, this is it, man. I have just a question to wrap up, and then we can just, I guess, go home. We don't have any questions today, but I'm sure that we're going to have some more in the upcoming live streams, as we're going to be making sure that this is a weekly thing. So if everything, listen to this, Brian, we have discussed is even partially true, what should the average Christian do differently in how they think about the spiritual warfare and discernment today? I'm going to read it again. If everything that we've discussed today is even partially true, what should the average Christian do differently in how they think about the spiritual warfare and discernment today?
Be careful. So two things. One, knowing it, as you mentioned, is half the battle. Because a lot of times Christians don't want to acknowledge the spiritual realm. You think, well, we don't see miracles now, so miracles must not happen. We don't see demons now, so they must not be around. Well, that doesn't follow at all. The Bible tells us there is a spiritual warfare, and we need to be aware of opening ourselves up to that. And the second thing is to not open yourselves up to it. And I think this raises a really immense and profound responsibility for parents, because we live in an age today where we give our kids one of these babies, a cell phone, and just let them do whatever they want, and we'll let them go online or let them go wherever, and things have changed. And as John Keel, who again was not only not a Christian, but he was very anti-Christian, said, don't get involved with these UFO topics, with all these kinds of things. It will suck you in, and it will deceive you, and before you know it, you're in a world of pain, as the Marines say, in some, like a Full Metal Jacket. You're in a world of pain. You're in a world of something else, they would say. So we have responsibility to ourselves, one, to be aware of it, to teach our kids the reality of these things, that there's nothing to play with. Don't play with Ouija boards. Don't do these kind of things. Don't use Chat GPT in a way that would function like a Ouija board. And stay away from this dark deception, and be aware, like when Robert went into witchcraft, be aware of what witchcraft really is. We don't want to scare our kids. We want them to have a healthy dose of respect for these kind of things. So being aware, and then just being careful we don't expose ourselves, as you said, to get a foot in the door, or let the
extreme, and it didn't, like, I caught it. So we didn't lose the thought. It was when we were switching. So I will say that for us as Christians, we need to be really, really mindful of the reality of the supernatural. We're super happy that if you're watching this either live or as a replay, that you're here at the Mysterion Files. This is the beginning of our journey as a live produced show. We're looking forward to have interactions with all of you guys. As you guys can see, we also have merch coming. We're going to have a lot of phenomenal guests here. And our ultimate goal is for this to help you learn more about these topics, to be enlightened by Brian's research and knowledge, and for us to be able to use our time wisely, being ministers to all of you guys. We want to be able to serve. This is not just to have fun or, to buy cool, candles to put in the background, or to have cool hats that we can wear. This is for you guys, and for us to be able to serve you, and for you guys to be able to, dig deep in and rely on somebody who has done the research. And like I said, we have a lot of ideas. We're going to be looking into movies. We're going to be looking into documentaries. We're going to be looking into research that has been done, footage that is out there. This was just an introductory episode, and I think that we did it with excellence. And just last few things I want to say is, if you got this far into the show, make sure that you like, make sure that you subscribe, make sure that you share with others if you think that this is something that is going to educate, entertain, and edify you moving forward. Brian, last words before we shut it down?
Yeah, so thanks for watching. Hope to see you guys later on. This is an area, this is one reason I got into this. One is just for personal interest. But the church, by and large, general statement, not always true in every specific instance, does not talk about the paranormal and the dangers therein. And so we're here to have fun. We're here to be able to discuss that. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you the next time, and stay mysterious.